The great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns. What is the great red dragon? Who does it represent? What are the 7 heads and the 10 horns? Who do they stand for? Why is it important to know and to understand? How to understand the Bible? The only way to understand the Bible is to use scriptures to explain scriptures. Precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little.
Isaiah chapter 28, verses 9 to 10. Verse 9, Whom shall ye teach knowledge, and whom shall ye make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk, and drawn from the breasts. Verse 10, For precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, and there a little.
What else does the scripture say about a good understanding?
2 Peter chapter 1 verse 20. Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scripture is of any private interpretation.
No personal interpretation, and no personal feelings. Those unlearn, those who explain scriptures by their own way, and those that teach scriptures by the way of the world. What does the Bible say about them?
2 Peter chapter 3 verse 16. As also in all his epistles, speaking in them of these things, in which are some things hard to be understood, which they that are unlearned and unstable wrest, as they do also the other scriptures, unto their own destruction.
The great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. What is the great red dragon? Who does it represent? What are the 7 heads and 10 horns? Who do they stand for?
Revelation chapter 12 verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
This verse was about a vision that John saw. The vision the Most High showed him was the great red dragon in heaven. What does it mean, the great red dragon in heaven? In heaven. What is heaven? Is the dragon really flying in the heaven where God dwells? Haven't we already known that there has been no dragon flying in heaven? Heaven means leadership, rulership, control, and power. The one that holds power is in heaven, or the one that is in power also in heaven. In this case, who is in power currently? Who is ruling all people, all nations on earth? Isn't America doing just that, evidently? A great red dragon. What is a great red dragon? Who is it? Many people believe this great red dragon is some kind of invisible, bad spirit, or some evil spirits in the spiritual realm. Obviously, this is the verse that people use to say the great red dragon is the devil and Satan.
Revelation chapter 12 verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him.
See, that great dragon is the devil and Satan. It's very true, but the question is, who is the devil? And who is Satan? Of course, who is the great red dragon?
Let's take a look at Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 to 17. Verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Verse 13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Verse 14. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Verse 16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Verse 17. That made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners?
In the Bible, there are scriptures that have one meaning, scriptures that have two meanings, and places and verses that have more than two meanings. What does the book of Job chapter 11, verse 6 say?
Job chapter 11 verse 6. And that he would shew thee the secrets of wisdom, that they are double to that which is.
Talking about Lucifer, in this chapter 14 here, we must understand that there are two meanings: spiritual and literal. First, spiritual, meaning Lucifer being an evil spirit, a bad angel, or a falling angel. Secondly, literal or physical, meaning a people, a race of people, or an evil race of people that worships their god Lucifer. They are a such race of people, has been used, ordered, commanded to do just evil things. In other words, they are the children of the devil. Now, let's go back to verse 12.
Isaiah chapter 14 verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?
This verse is not just about Lucifer, spiritually, but also about a literal Lucifer, or a race of people, which didst weaken the nations. Did Lucifer weaken the nations? Did he go here and there, bombing the nations? Let's move to Isaiah chapter 14 verses 16 and 17.
Verse 16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms?
Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Clearly, you see, it is about the man, not the angel, not Lucifer, nor the spiritual angel. The word man here does not mean one man. It is a people or a race of people who made the earth to tremble and who did shake kingdoms. Did Lucifer do this? Did Lucifer bomb lands? Did he go around and destroy people and destroy their nations?
Verse 17. That made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners.
Who made the world as a wilderness? Who destroyed the cities thereof, and who opened not the house of his prisoners? Again, did Lucifer do this? Did he go here and there, from one nation to the next, bombing the nations down, burning them, turning them into uninhabited lands? What else? Did Lucifer put people in prisons too? Back to Revelation 12. A great red dragon. What is a great red dragon? Remember, the great red dragon is called the devil and Satan in the book of Revelation 12, verse 9. Again, the question is, who is the devil and who is Satan? Talking about this great red dragon, we must understand that there are also two meanings: spiritual and literal. Firstly, spiritual, a great red dragon being the devil and Satan, an evil spirit. Secondly, literal or physical, meaning a people, a race of people, so-called an evil race of people. The race of people worships their god Lucifer. They are a race of people that has been used, ordered, and commanded to do just evil things. In other words, they are the children of the devil. Red. What does it mean? What does the red dragon mean? The word red in this verse. It is what many people say, that red is sin. They quote the book of Isaiah, chapter 1 verse 18.
Isaiah chapter 1 verse 18. Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow, though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool.
Sins be as scarlet. Not only red is sin, many other people say the word red symbolizes as murderers. They use Revelation chapter 6, verse 4.
Revelation chapter 6 verse 4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword.
What is sin? Does the word red really mean sin? Let's see what sin is in the scriptures.
1 John chapter 3 verse 4. Whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law.
A great red dragon. What is a great red dragon? Who is it?
Genesis chapter 25, verses 25 and 26. Verse 25. And the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they call his name Esau. 26. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them.
Esau was red and hairy. What race is red and hairy? What people that have hair all over their bodies? What people that turn red in the sun? What people that do not have melanin on their skin? If Esau were not a European, the white race, was he really an African or an Asian? Why Jacob was not mentioned of his skin color? Why Esau's skin color was mentioned, but Jacob's was not, because Jacob was like everyone else. God created people of the dust of the ground. Ground color goes from light brown to dark brown. Now we know the great red dragon is Esau, the white race, or the Europeans. Let's see what Job said about the dragon.
The book of Job chapter 30, verse 29. I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls.
Who was the dragon Job referred to? Job was a brother to Esau, evidently. Remember, Jacob and Esau were brothers.
Revelation chapter 12 verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads, and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
7 heads. 7 heads and 7 crowns on the heads. These were 7 important empires. Talking about these 7 heads of this great red dragon, there are so many different explanations, different interpretations on this such topic online, especially videos on YouTube. Here are the 3 very common explanations for these 7 heads of the dragon. The first interpretation of the 7 heads of the great red dragon. The first head was Egypt. The second head was Assyria. The third head was ancient Babylon. The fourth head, Medo and Persia. The fifth head was Greece. The sixth head, Rome, and the 7th head, Turkish Empire. The second interpretation of the 7 heads of the great red dragon. The first head was Nimrod. The second head was Egypt. The third head was Assyria. The fourth head, ancient Babylon. The fifth head, Medo and Persia. The sixth head, Greece. And the 7th head, Rome. The third interpretation of the 7 heads of the great red dragon. The first head, Egypt. The second head, Assyria. The third head, ancient Babylon. The fourth head, Medo and Persia. The fifth head was Greece. The sixth head was Rome, the first. And the 7th head was Rome, the second time. Before we come to understanding these 7 heads, we need to understand who the great red dragon is. We know that the great red dragon is Esau. The descendants of Esau are the Europeans. Don't forget to include Russia, because Russia is also from Esau. Remember, there are scriptures that have double meanings. About this red dragon, we understand it has double meanings, spiritual and literal. First, spiritual. The great red dragon represents the evil spirit that controls and deceives the people. Second, literal or physical. The great red dragon is symbolically a race of people. A race of people that are used, controlled, and deceived to do evil. We have the great red dragon as Europe. So, must not the 7 heads of this red dragon also be the 7 major European empires? The question is, which were they? Do we know who the European empires were? Better yet, the next question is, who was the first European empire? Or, so-called, who was the first head of the great red dragon? Was Egypt the first European empire, based on the first and the third interpretations? Was Nimrod the first European empire, based on the second interpretation? Who was the first European empire? How do we find it out? Before we go on, we must learn and understand how the prophets wrote scriptures down and how they saw visions.
Hosea chapter 12 verse 10. I have also spoken by the prophets, and I have multiplied visions, and used similitudes, by the ministry of the prophets.
This was how the prophets did, they compared visions. So, we need to know how to compare multiplied visions. To find out who was the first head of this great red dragon, see what the scriptures have talked about the times of the Gentiles. Talking about the times of the Gentiles, we only go back to the ancient Babylon. Based on the great image of Daniel, we can see there were so-called 2 parts of the Gentiles. First, the Gentiles being the nations. And second, the Gentiles being the nations of Esau, the white race, or the European nations. Take a look in the book of Luke chapter 21 verse 24.
Luke chapter 21 verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
Based on the great image in the book of Daniel, these were the times of the Gentiles, ruled by the nations. The 2 empires were the ancient Babylon, the head of the great image, and Medo and Persia, the chest and arms of the great image. For more details of the head of the great image, you can read the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 4, Daniel chapter 2, verse 32, and verses 37 and 38. Also, for more details of 2 arms and breast of the great image, you can read the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 5 and Daniel chapter 2, verses 32 and 39. Base on the great image. These were also the times of the Gentiles, ruled by the nations of Esau, the white race, or the European nations. The first empire of Esau was Greece, indicated the belly and thighs of the great image. And the second empire of Esau was Rome, indicated the 2 legs of the great image. For more details of the belly and thighs of the great image, read the book of Daniel chapter 7, verse 7, and Daniel chapter 2, verses 32 and 39. Also for more details of the 2 legs of the great image, read Daniel chapter 7, verse 6, and Daniel chapter 2, verses 33 and 40. Do we know what the time of the Gentiles currently is? That is, Babylon the Great. This is the last empire of the Gentiles, which is currently happening. The Great Babylon is happening and will be destroyed. Who was the first empire of Europe? Who was the first head of the great red dragon? That was Greece. Here were the 7 major nations of Europe, the 7 heads of the great red dragon. The first head, Greece. The second head, Rome. The third head, Spain. The fourth head, France. The fifth head, Germany. The sixth head, Russia, and the 7th head, Great Britain. Greece was the first head for certain. Now, what about the 6 heads remaining, right? What were they? We continue to find out more details about these 7 heads, or these 7 major empires.
Revelation, chapter 17, verse 3, and verses 8 to 12. Verse 3, So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 8, The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life, from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. Verse 9, And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. Verse 10, And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Verse 11, And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Verse 12, And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings, 1 hour with the beast. So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns.
This beast was the great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, as in Revelation 12. The first, Greece. The second, Rome. The third, Spain. The fourth, France. The fifth, Germany. The sixth, Russia. And the 7th, Great Britain.
The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
The beast that thou sawest was. Meaning the beast that John saw in his vision. Remember, it was in his vision only. And is not. Meaning, the beast was not currently existing at his time. Note, this was the time when Rome ruled. This part right here is what a lot of people get mixed up. Many people misunderstand this part of a story, which blows the whole story out of proportion. Again, the beast that John saw was in his vision, and it was not currently happening during his time, which was during Roman ruling. We must know that there has been only one dragon, this beast, since the beginning of the dragon's ruling, or the European ruling. The 7 heads of the dragon indicated 7 different times of ruling. In other words, the dragon had never been with his 7 heads all the times. Nor had it been with 7 heads at one time. During the ruling of Rome, this great red dragon apparently had only 1 head, which was the 2nd head, Rome. Remember, the first head, Greece, fell under Rome. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. What does this mean? Where was this bottomless pit? Keep in mind, this does not mean there would be another beast nor another dragon. The head it was. There would be another head of the dragon coming out of the bottomless pit. There would be another head coming from this great red dragon. Evidently, there would be a nation or an empire coming out of Europe. The Bible calls Europe the bottomless pit. Remember, this great red dragon is Esau or Europe. Who was this beast? Who was this so-called new head? Was he going to be the head number 8? Or would it be one of these heads, head number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, or number 7?
Revelation, chapter 17, verses 9 to 10. Verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. Verse 10. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space.
The 7 heads are 7 mountains, meaning 7 kings, 7 empires of Europe. 5 are fallen. Here they are. Greece, first head. Spain, third head. France, fourth head. Germany, fifth head. And Russia, sixth head. We have to understand. Of these 7 kings, 5 were fallen. 1 is. Rome was the second head. Of these 7 kings, Rome was existing at the time of John. Speaking about Rome, we need to understand a little bit of history. In the time of John, Rome ruled the world. Rome fell in about 103 AD. To 1453 AD, Rome revived, which was called the Renaissance of Rome. Let's see what else the scripture talked about this head.
Revelation chapter 13 verse 3. And I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
Do we understand it now? Rome existed in the time of John, though Rome fell but revived. Spain, France, Germany, and Russia, though came after Rome but fell, while Rome has revived and continued to these days. The other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. Was it Great Britain, the head number 7? Was it Great Britain that ruled a short space? We continue to verse 11 next.
Revelation chapter 17 verse 11. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Verse 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is.
In verse 11, the beast that was. This means John saw the beast in his vision. It was the same beast he saw in verse 8. What else said in verse 11? The beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7. Who was the head number 8? He was of the 7. What does it mean? Was Great Britain also the head number 7? Do not forget, this great red dragon was Esau, the European countries. Do we know who this head number 8 was? What nation was born from another nation? Or, so-called, what nation has a mother? Wouldn't it be America? Didn't America come from Great Britain? Great Babylon has a mother. America has a mother. We go to the book of Jeremiah.
Jeremiah chapter 50, verses 9 and 12. Verse 9. For, lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country. And they shall set themselves in array against her, from thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain.
An assembly of nations will fight against Babylon. Great Babylon, which is America. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain. Their missiles, warheads, will shoot America on target.
Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 12. Verse 12. Your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert.
She that bare you shall be ashamed. Babylon has a mother. America has a mother, has she not? The hindermost of the nations. Meaning, America came out last. America is the youngest nation, is she not? Shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. America will be destroyed. Back to Revelation chapter 17 and continue with verse 11.
Verse 11. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
This beast with the 8th head is America, Babylon the Great, and will go to destruction. Do we remember the times of the Gentiles? Until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Luke 21:24. The last time of the Gentiles is the Great Babylon, is America.
Revelation, chapter 17 verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings, 1 hour with the beast.
These 10 horn here are the 10 horns in Revelation chapter 12 that has mentioned. Receive power as kings, 1 hour with a beast. 1 hour here does not mean 60 minutes. Roughly 42 years. Back to Revelation chapter 12 verse 3.
Verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold a great red dragon, having 7 heads, and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads.
10 horns. Who are the 10 horns? 10 kings, 10 nations in union. European Union, so-called EU. 10 common markets, NATO. Now we have seen who the great red dragon is, have we not? The great red dragon is Esau, the white race, the European people. The 7 heads are the 7 major nations of Europe. America is Babylon the Great, also of Europe. The 10 horns are the European Union. Remember, prove all things, test all things, and question all things. In the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21.
Prove all things, hold fast that which is good,